Hey, welcome back. Look at this. I've got myself a brand new DJI Mavic 4 Pro. Now, I'm going to be reviewing this today because I'm Canadian, so I get one, but we just found out that if you're in the States, you just can't get them right now, you know, tariffs, but I can play with one. So sorry, America. And no, I'm not fishing. I'm just in a boat because that's where I do my camera reviews from. And it's interesting because it's actually been a couple of years since we saw the Mavic 3 Pro, which isn't a long time, but by DJI's prolific release cycle standards, it actually is. But here it is. We've got the 4 Pro. Can't wait to play with it. I'm Chris Nichols. This is PetaPixel. Let's get to it.
Hey, it's your buddy Jordan with a sweet deal for you. You know, if you've been paying attention at the end of our PetaPixel episodes, there's a title card there that says music provided by Audio. And that's because Audio has an absolutely massive library of music. So when I'm putting together an episode, I can always find the perfect song for whatever kind of sequence I'm editing. But what if I were to tell you, you could get access to that entire library for life? I mean, how much would that be worth? Something like $500 would be a great deal, and that's actually what an audio.com lifetime membership will usually cost you, but I can do way better. If you click the link in the description below and use coupon code PetaPixel199, you can get a lifetime subscription to all of Audio's great music for $199 dues. That's an amazing deal you'd be crazy not to take advantage of right now. So again, click the link in the description below, use coupon code PetaPixel199 for a lifetime subscription to Audio's great music for only $199. Thanks so much to Audio for sponsoring this episode, and let's talk about drones.
Okay, so the first thing I want to point out on the Mavic 4 Pro is this new gimbal design. Fantastic. I mean, this gives you basically the most that we've ever seen as far as control goes on the Mavic series, and it does some interesting stuff. First off, you can turn vertical to do vertical video just with the flick of a switch. That's quite interesting, and it does unlock some very interesting kind of rotational work as well that you can see here. Super fun stuff to do. But also, of course, you've got full motion below the drone. I mean, this thing can point straight down, but it can also, very interestingly enough, point almost straight up, 70 degrees off axis. So really very cool to do hero shots or shooting up into the canopy. It's a really cool feature. What I especially like about this gimbal system is just we've got the 2-arm support. You got support arms on either side, the rotation. It all makes it very flexible, but also actually really compact, you know? And actually they have this new sling design to protect it, which promises to be easier than the old push-on plastic clip-in where you kind of got to get it exactly right and kind of fudge it in there. This is just clip on the bottom, stretch it over the top, and you're ready to move. As you can see here, this also houses 3 interesting cameras. I want to talk about that next. Okay, so on the Mavic 3 Pro, we had ourselves a 20 megapixel 4/3 sensor, and that did give us pretty good low light performance, but now the Mavic 4 Pro, we've got quite the upgrade. So first off, this is still a 4/3 sensor, but DJI is saying it's 100 megapixels. Now, they're not talking about anything, but our suspicions are this is a sensor very similar to the GH7, and they're using a quad Bayer setup, and that's how they're getting the 100 megapixel number. I mean, regardless, this thing can do either 25 or 100 megapixel still photos. We now get an upgrade in the aperture. This goes from f2 to f11. And so I really like the fact that we get that wider f2 aperture on the main camera because, like, right now it's nice and bright, but we're going to be waiting for this to go down. We're going to do some low light testing with this camera, and that f2 aperture is going to come in handy. But while it is still sunny out, let's say that, I don't know, you forgot your NDs at home, or you don't have any NDs because this is a brand new camera and DJI didn't send you any NDs to use with the camera. Well, luckily, this lens can go down to f11, and that's really handy to cut some of that light so that you don't have to use ultra fast shutter speeds out here in this bright condition. It also does give you nice little sun stars. You can get some fun 10-point sun stars when you stop down there to those tighter apertures. So this is giving us all a 28mm full frame equivalent field of view, which is a nice general purpose wide angle lens. And this is also the only camera that's going to give you 6K 60p footage, 4K 120p footage. So this will be the one that you rely on in a lot of situations, but there are 2 more. Okay, our second camera, this is capped at 4K 60p. It's a 48 megapixel quad Bayer type 1/1.3 sensor. We've seen image quality like this very similar to things like the DJI Flip, which we like. It's just not gonna have the same low light performance as this main camera. Now this is gonna give us a 70mm full frame field of view. Not bad. Nice when you wanna get just that little bit of background close to your subject, kind of portrait looks, like that kind of stuff. And this camera is gonna give us an f2.8 aperture. Not bad, but keep in mind you have no other options. It's just fixed at f2.8. So if you are going to be shooting in bright conditions, you're definitely going to want to use NDs. Otherwise, in low light, it's going to suffer a little bit compared to the main camera. In fact, this is the one camera module that we really see returning from the Mavic 3 Pro. And then we do get a long telephoto camera. This now returns, but it's a better sensor than what we had in the Mavic 3 Pro. So this is gonna actually give us a type 1/1.5 sensor, larger than the older type 1/2 sensor that we had before. We also get a faster f2.8 aperture versus the older f3.5 aperture. And so this telephoto lens is gonna give us a 168mm full frame field of view. Great for when you wanna isolate a subject against a busy background or just have that nice zoomed in look where the background's really close to your subject. Awesome for like Michael Bay hero shots or, you know, any sort of adventure filmmaking. It's be really good. This is going to give you 50 megapixel stills and it is capped at 4K 60p, but it's a marked improvement over the Mavic 3 Pro and I'm really going to enjoy using that longer reach. Okay, so if we're going to fly the drone, we have to have our batteries topped up here ready to go. And so first off, the Mavic 4 Pro does use a brand new battery type. It looks a lot like the Mavic 3 batteries, but this is a BWX 341 series battery. It is a different one. Now, of course, you can charge these individually like you always would, but it does make sense to maybe get an upgrade and get this. This is the Mavic 4 Pro parallel charging hub. And this is pretty neat because first off, I can charge 3 batteries. I can do an individual one in about 40 minutes or all 3 in about 90 minutes, but it unlocks some other features. So first off, if one of these is lower than the others, it will top it up till they're all equal and then fully charge all 3 of them together. Or you can set it up so that if you've got 3 batteries that are all sort of like a lower charge, you can use the 2 lowest charge batteries to fill up one of the other ones. At least then it's ready to go in the drone and give you that maximum flight time. But this is also a pretty versatile unit. I mean, first off, if I want to charge quickly, I can use the mini SDC port, but I can also charge a little bit slower through a USB-C port. So it's nice and versatile that way. And if I'm on the road and I need portable power, I can actually use these batteries with this device as a portable power bank, up to 100 watts of power just out the USB-C. So that's really cool. And when we're going to fly this Mavic 4 Pro, we actually get to use a brand new controller. This is new RC2 Pro. It looks quite similar, but first off, you've got this really cool screen design. So if I fold this out, it actually turns the RC2 Pro on. This is a brighter screen than before, which is always nice when you're in bright sunlight. And also, I can flip it vertically. And if I do that, it actually rotates the gimbal vertically as well. So that's really cool. If I'm going to do stuff for Instagram, social media, and I just want to have that convenience, that's really nice that I can do it right there. Best part as well, I don't have to take off these joysticks anymore. When I close it, look at this. It actually closes them down and puts them flat. I mean, by far, that's like the best feature right there. So instant win, must buy. Yours my money, take it now. But this is a really clever device system. Now, battery life is about 4 hours. That's the only thing, so you might want to have supplementary charging power if you're going to do a longer shoot, but otherwise, fantastic. So I want to talk about the collision avoidance next. And one of the reasons we came out to the cabin is we got so much vegetation here. There's branches and tight pathways and trees. Like, it is a nightmare for drones, but the Mavic 4 Pro boasts one of the most advanced collision avoidance systems known. It's got 6 fisheye cameras located around the drone. It can see in all directions. And I want to talk about that because, like, look, Jordan and I are not experienced drone pilots, okay? We were stressed out there. It was insane. Like, all these branch stuff. We're flying this very expensive drone through all this deadfall and trees and stuff, freaking out. But the Mavic 4 Pro is small enough that you can fit it through in some very compact spaces. If we can do it as inexperienced pilots, then experienced pilots could absolutely do way crazier stuff. So how did it go? Well, first off, let's just talk about the basic collision avoidance, which is to brake. So if the drone detects something, and again, these cameras are seeing stuff all over the place, if it feels it's in danger, it will simply stop the drone. You won't be able to fly in certain directions. And that's a great way for beginners to just have the safest way to do this possible. Go to bypass, and then this is interesting because now the drone is going to try to use some movements on its own to avoid these objects. And you see it here doing a pretty good job. You know, for flying through trees, rather than just stop, it will simply simply move the drone around it. I also wanted to try the nifty setting. So think of this as like the most advanced mode where it will give you some very good bypass control, but if you go a little bit too fast, which will allow you to do, there is an opportunity to run into certain things. I mean, you know, bits of twigs, grass, that kind of stuff. It just tries to avoid the seriously solid objects. Regardless, I would say the collision avoidance system did a fantastic job overall, and you can tailor it for the situation that you want to use it in. Now, I will say this though, having such an advanced collision avoidance system, it does sometimes make the drone a little bit timid when you're in the safest modes. We're talking cinematic mode where the drone flies slower. It seems to take even more care to avoid objects. We had some situations where we would try to move the drone, and even if it didn't appear to have an object there, it just wouldn't move, okay? I mean, I don't know if there was bugs flying over open water and it was picking those up. It's a very sensitive system. You can see here too, even just like wispy grass stalks and stuff like that, it will absolutely respond to. So keep in mind, again, this is when you're in the safest modes. You always have the options to then change these bypass modes or go to the nifty mode if you really want to have a more smooth experience with maybe a little bit more risk. And of course, you can always go into normal mode for faster speeds or sport mode where you of course lose all collision avoidance altogether. Now, we also wanted to wait for it to get dark out here because DJI also claims that the Mavic 4 Pro, the collision avoidance system, will work in very dark situations. And as you can see, it actually does a good job. Even though there's basically very little light, it's still sensitive enough to pick up objects and dodge and avoid them. This can be really useful if you just want to operate a drone at night, but it's also good if you're trying to bring the drone home in dark conditions. And just the fact that you can kind of rely on that to, again, avoid objects, come back home on its own is a really handy thing to take some of that stress away. It's still really stressful flying these in near darkness. So with every new iteration of the Mavic, we see improvements to the technology. And one complaint that a lot of people had was when you were tracking a subject, focusing on it, if something came in between the subject and the drone, it would often lose focus, maybe going off to that new object or just kind of losing the subject and having to reacquire it. And so they've improved that here on the Mavic Pro 4. That's something they really wanted to do. We got down in the trees. You can see Jordan is tracking the drone across. I'm going through the boardwalk. We got these branches and trees coming in between us, and yet it did a really good job of just staying on me, the original subject. There's also improvements to things like the spotlight and active track focusing. We saw this with the DJI Flip when we played with that as well. So again, you can see here, it's just more tenacious, smooth, locks on the subject, just less likely to lose it while you're doing these, in some cases, fairly extreme movements. Another cool thing about active track and spotlight is just that because we have more flexibility with the gimbal and how far it can move and how far it can rotate, you can just track moving objects without reaching the limit of the gimbal as soon as you would on a lot of the older models. So that's very useful. And if you're also into car tracking, it'll actually pick up automobiles and track them from like 200 meters away. So you can, again, do really extreme movements where you pick up a car from far away, fly right into it, and have it tracking the whole time. They've even improved it to work in very low light situations. So even if you're in dim conditions and you want to have this tracking capability, the new system does a good job with that. So the Mavic 4 Pro is also really pushing the boundaries of how far it can go away. 41-kilometer range, how fast it can go. I would normally give this miles per hour, but unfortunately, again, you can't get this drone in the States right now. Sorry, Americans. So let's go with 90 kilometers an hour top speed. And also the flight time. You just get extended flight time, better battery life, better aerodynamics in this. So about 51 minutes per battery. And that's giving us lots of time to just be flying the drone and not worry too much about running out of time. So if you want to scout locations at distance or do really complicated shots or get the drone up high for telephoto photography, you've got lots of time. So the Mavic 4 Pro, you can get up to 512 gigs of internal storage, which we've been using today, no problem, that's been great. You can expand it with micro SD cards as usual if you want to, but you can actually get wireless transmission, 10-bit HDR footage up to 30 kilometers away. Again, sorry America, 30 kilometers away. We like to keep our drones within line of sight. That's not something we would ever do, but it's nice to have that extra power if you are going to use a system like that, because if you're in high interference areas like urban areas and stuff like that and using the drone, it's just nice that you'll have less likelihood of any sort of problems with transmission given just this more powerful system that they're using. Another really interesting thing that you might find useful, and we might actually find useful for downloading the footage, is you can actually use DJI's drone while it's still in the bag, but transmit to your computer. So you can just wake the drone up without having to take it out of the bag, and then you can use Wi-Fi to actually transfer all of your footage very quickly from the drone to your computer. That's pretty cool. All right, guys, it is day 2. We've had a lovely sleep. We've had a chance to get all that low light testing done and to look at our photos and footage that we've captured. And so Jordan's going to come out and talk about his video impressions on the footage, you know, what he thinks about the image quality. But I just want to quickly touch on the photos that we took, because drones are being used for a lot of fun aerial photography. And the main camera does have this improvement now that it can push to 100 megapixels using what they don't want to call a quad Bayer setup, but it's a quad Bayer setup. And this is very similar to what we've seen out of smartphones. So comparing the 25 megapixel shots to the 100 megapixel shots, you can see here there is a slight increase in resolution. I do consider this quite minor. I mean, again, it's nice to have. If you want the absolute best resolution that you can get, use the 100 megapixel mode. It does make a difference, but it's pretty small. Regardless though, you are getting some nice photography out of this. And there's a fair difference between the main camera and the telephoto lenses. I mean, you gotta remember that effectively the Mavic 4 Pro is like a flying smartphone when it comes to the 70mm and 168mm lens. And the images do look like what you'd expect out of a smartphone's telephoto. But the main camera not only is improved for resolution, but is that larger 4/3 sensor. And we are getting image quality that'd be more on par with something you'd expect from Panasonic or OM System.
All right, Jordan here to talk about the video performance on the Mavic 4 Pro. And we do get a pretty large complement of compressed recording modes available with this. We can do H.265, and we can record all I or long GOP recording on it. What you might see missing is ProRes RAW, which kind of makes me suspect we might see a Cine version of this later, or maybe a paid upgrade in the future. But regardless, what's really nice is we're getting the full D-Log profile available with this, which gives you very expansive dynamic range. As well, we have the ability to record using the D-Log M profile that we see on things like the Pocket Gimbal or the Mini drone. So this is a more basic profile with much more limited dynamic range. It's nice that it gives you the option to match with some of those other cameras, but just make sure that when you're using the main camera, you're shooting in the full D-Log profile. Looking at the footage from the main camera, it really did remind me of using some of the high-end Micro Four Thirds cameras like that GH7 that I keep referring to. Just an incredibly detailed image when you're shooting 6K and a very wide dynamic range on it. However, I did find it odd that to access 4K 120, you had to use a separate slow motion option in the menu, and I could see why, because as soon as we turn that on, there is a significant crop on this camera, which is something we didn't see on some of those 25 megapixel Panasonics. As a result, noise is going to get worse and your overall detail will drop as well. So I was very impressed with the main camera. It looks like we're using a larger mirrorless camera, but as soon as you flip over to the two telephoto cameras, it does have, like Chris mentioned, kind of that smartphone look to it. It looks a lot more like a basic consumer level drone. It's really nice we have the option of the longer lens, but just be aware it is definitely going to be a noticeable difference when you switch over to those. But the one frustration I'm constantly butting up against with this is that even though this is a pretty expensive UAV, a lot of the options are still styled more like on the consumer drones. Like, we know that DJI can do waveforms. I've used a Ronin 4D. Where are those when we're trying to meter out our scene? As well, doing aerial photography is something where I'm constantly bouncing around between different cameras and different shutter speeds, different frame rates. So having the ability to use a shutter angle would be a huge time saver. I shot quite a few slow motion clips at the wrong shutter speed. But short of the Inspire 3, which is absolutely massive, incredibly expensive, and totally out of the reach of most of the filmmakers and creatives who are going to be looking at the occasional use of aerial photography, this is the best footage and the most usable drone that I've ever seen. So for that reason, it might be worth the large investment and the 2 years we've been waiting for this model to drop.
So the Mavic 4 Pro proves to be a very capable professional drone. And if you're looking for the multiple cameras and that higher level of image quality, this is a fantastic package to go with. A lot of the changes are incremental. I mean, you know, slightly better main camera, and, you know, new telephoto lens. We're getting benefits like the better collision avoidance. And I do appreciate the fact that the autofocus is a little bit more reliable than what we've seen before. As well, the drone's got improved flight time, battery life, aerodynamics. I mean, these are all nice improvements. The main creative change you're going to find here is now the full rotation of that gimbal, and you could do some really fun shots with that. And that rotational effect is a lot of fun, not only to get interesting Dutch angles and cool looks, but also just to have that extra range for the gimbal so that you can do more extreme movements and still keep your subject centered in the composition. Or as well, if you're a vertical creator, this makes a ton of sense. I mean, just be able to switch to a vertical frame quickly and easily when you want to make that content, that is going to be a big benefit. The other thing that I would recommend here is definitely invest in the Pro Kit. I mean, not only getting 3 batteries in total, but also the charger. That was really convenient to keep everything topped up as quickly as possible, and also to have that RC2 Pro Remote system. And so for our American viewers, I sincerely hope that you are able to get this drone sooner than later. But for everybody else in the world, it's a really powerful drone. I hope you guys enjoyed this little look at it. Do leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. And do check out the PetaPixel podcast. It's on this exact same channel or all your favorite podcasting apps. Also consider getting a PetaPixel membership. Then you can look at our website, peruse all the articles and content there without any ads. As well, you get great discounts on our merch store. You get to look at all the sample galleries, have access to the raw files there to Pixel Peep. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you soon with more on PetaPixel.